Maybe you guys can give introductions of who you're what organization you're representing, and what sort of deals you guys invest in, what sizes, and where in digital health. Dana, could you start?
Guys first. Because my name's Dana, I get to go first. First of all, I look forward to spending some time with you. I actually was a device investor until I heard Alan's presentation, and I switched over to digital health this afternoon. So they're one short on their panel. I am a partner at Kleiner Perkins, and we have 3 major practices. So we have what's kind of a traditional digital practice and IT practice. About 6 or 7 years ago, we started really investing heavily in clean tech. And for all 40 years, just like with our digital practice, we've had a life science practice. Our first investment was here locally with Genentech. Historically, we've really invested in 3 main areas: biotech, pharma, devices, and molecular diagnostics within our life science group. About 2.5 years ago, we stepped back and said, what's happening in the world of, and I'll use healthcare IT, digital health kind of together, what's happening in that world? We had been an investor in WebMD and eHealth and a few other things, but had never had a clear initiative in the space. We stepped back and saw 3 major trends. One was healthcare reform, not just the incentives that existed, but maybe more important, the market shaping aspects that was going to cause a lot more digitization, et cetera, digitization of data, et cetera. The second was technology convergence with the cloud, mobile devices, and other wireless technologies. We thought there was an opportunity to do things differently than they've been done traditionally. And then the last trend was really around the healthcare consumer, a more informed consumer, but also a consumer that was participating more in paying the bill, and we believe that that's going to continue to escalate, the percentage of the bill that I, as a consumer. So we thought, geez, those are 3 very interesting trends. We looked across our practice, and we had a lot of expertise in those technology areas. And we also had a lot of expertise with consumers, not necessarily healthcare consumers as much. And so we looked at all those things, and we decided to look at digital health. And so we did a bunch of research, and about 2.5 years ago, we became more active. We've done 4 investments, mostly in IT-enabled healthcare services. And we believe there are 3 very interesting areas. One is around healthcare IT-enabled services. Another is around big data, taking structured, unstructured data sets, putting them together, having analytical layers that inform clinical decisions, business decisions, et cetera, on top of that. And then the third area is really around engagement. What happens to us from a healthcare point of view, about 30–50% is pre-wired genetically. The rest is all based on our behavior and environment. And we believe maybe now, the holy grail, of course, in healthcare is to modify in a sustainable fashion engagement and compliance. Maybe now with some of those tools that I outlined a little bit earlier, there's an opportunity to do that. And so with that, we've started an initiative in the space.
Hi, I'm Melania Adamian. I started Life Sciences Angel Network in New York City, and I'm actually also a medical device convert into digital healthcare. In fact, I am actually, the story started here in Silicon Valley. I'm part of LSA, Alan May's group. I was in a device screening committee for a while until we actually moved to New York, and part of Health Tech Capital. Funny enough, back in 2010, when I moved back to New York, again being part of a venture group, I thought it was very weird that New York didn't have any organized angel movement in the life sciences, and I really loved being part of those 2 groups in California. So I started this group in New York. So making a long story short, we've been around for 18 months. We funded 4 companies in the first year of our existence, and 2 of them are in medical devices, 2 of them in healthcare IT. And our focus remains to be split between medical devices and healthcare IT. And healthcare IT in and itself is a pretty big and very broad category that encompasses basically everything from mobile technology, telehealth to analytics. And the areas that we so far endorsed in digital healthcare are basically analytical layers, as Dana just mentioned, and the other company that is not mobile. So we do like mobile health, but we haven't seen anything that we would invest in so far. Though it is definitely an interesting feature. So the average size, it's an angel group, so we'll go anywhere between 350 to 700. We syndicate quite often in our deals, and we're geographically agnostic, and that means that we do not invest we're not New York centric. In fact, 3 out of our 4 investments are made in California. I don't know if I missed anything.
She missed a lot, but it'll come out. I sit on Milena's advisory board for LSAN. I come out of the IT world, and a few years ago, I kind of got tired of hearing pitches for tools that would help rich white guys share videos better. So I decided to explore something else. And what I see is 3 markets. There's the market for healthcare, which is kind of what outsiders think of hospitals, clinics, pharma, medicine, doctors, insurance, that kind of stuff. Then there's the market we all know intimately, but we don't think about it a lot. That's the market for bad health. It includes the pastries we had for breakfast this morning, cigarettes, alcohol. De facto includes all the distractions that keep you from going to sleep and getting well rested, all kinds of stuff. And then finally, there's the market for health itself, which includes perhaps health clubs, maybe sports equipment, a few things around health, but there really wasn't a market for healthy behavior. That was just something you did or were told to do. Now that digital health is here and there's the notion of engagement and self-tracking and competing with your friends to walk more or to exercise or to lose weight or whatever, suddenly there's actually a market for individuals to buy stuff and services that will make them more healthy. To me, that's incredibly exciting. One other way of looking at this is we're beginning with a market that's based on blind faith. It's pretty clear that if you walk more, sleep more, drink less alcohol, smoke less, you're going to end up healthier. What's really not clear is how to foster that kind of behavior. What we're doing now is selling tools and devices and cool IT stuff to individuals who believe, to employers who are willing to do certain things on faith. Everybody's trying to sell this to insurance companies and governments, but without great success. Over the next few years, I believe a lot of these individual participants are going to generate enough data to prove that these kind of behavioral modification tools and services work. And then it'll be much easier to sell this stuff, even possibly to governments. But to some extent, what we're trying to do is help people who have short time spans and not a lot of willpower to resist the blandishments of the bad health market. And that's what I invest in one way or another. Sorry.
Hi, my name is Sean Ahrens, and I come from the entrepreneur side here, as well as the patient side. So I've kind of been involved in the startup scene in Silicon Valley for a few years now, and last year decided to take a run at the digital health market myself, kind of by accident. I've lived with a condition called Crohn's for about 14 years now, and for those of you who don't know, it's an autoimmune condition that causes inflammation in the digestive tract. And I stumbled into what I'm doing now because I literally took my software programming skills and decided to build some software that would allow me to track my health using my mobile phone. And then shared it with my friends, and my friend said, oh, that's really awesome. Like, you can totally track your health. You can press a few buttons, and then over time, you'll see some graphs. And then they're like, I would like to do that myself. And I don't want to just see your health, right? So I started building out more features to allow other patients to do the same. And what I actually stumbled into, that it wasn't the health tracking that mattered so much, but it was the actual personal connection between patients that mattered a lot. And so I literally went from having just a small group of friends that I had met up with in San Francisco and in Berkeley that had either Crohn's or colitis, and I invited them to the site, and they really enjoyed that. Then I added a feature that allowed people to invite each other, and that's what's brought me to where I am today, because right now that number went from 20 to 750 patients right now without me doing anything. So clearly there's something going on with connecting patients, and my goal is to continue that effort. So you can kind of say that we're sort of the Facebook of health. The product I built is called Chronology, and the basic premise here is that patients themselves walk around with vast silos of knowledge and data in their own heads. And I think the traditional medical system that we live in right now is one that isn't cognizant of that, doesn't recognize that. And so we're trying to build connections for the upstreaming of patient data and the upstreaming of that to a hub, which can then tell patients what things are working well, sort of on an informational level, but also just connect people on an emotional level. So yeah, if you look at like the market out there, I mean, you have a half of Americans with a chronic condition, and you have a third of them with autoimmune or psychiatric conditions. So there's this huge mass of people out there that are going through health concerns, and right now that data is getting squandered. So my goal is to do the exact opposite, acknowledge it, put it together, and make some great sense out of it.
Thanks, Sean. So now that we know a little bit more about our panel, we have someone, we have an entrepreneur who is fundraising, maybe fundraised a little bit, who can get into that a little bit later, an angel, someone that runs an angel group, and someone that invests other people's money. And his own. Some of his own. So if digital health is the space, the nebulous space between life science and technology, curious how you guys, the investors, and then Sean, I have a different question for you. How you guys are looking at deals in terms of valuation, in terms of the team and what's important, in terms of the exits, and if you're looking at it and what you're drawing from your life science experience and what you're drawing from your technology experience, and what does it resemble more, or is it just a pure mix of the two? Whoever wants to take it first.
I can go first. Okay, so since coming from a very heavy medical background, I'm actually a physician. I'm a cardiologist, and who practiced until recently, until I turned into investor, et cetera, et cetera. So I would just say that we do value two things. A, it has to be you have to really present to us with a condition or problem in the healthcare that is a real problem. It's not, I mean, to be honest, we're not getting terribly excited about 399 apps or something like that, because it does not represent any kind of A, sustainable business, B, any sustainable improvement, because the interest tends to fade fairly quickly. Second, the way we look at the investments, I mean, at the opportunities, I would say, not the investments, is in a very, I would say, methodical manner. And the highest pretty bar, that's why we ended up investing in the first year of our existence in 4 companies, because about 90% of our angel investors in our group are, in one way or the other, have the either entrepreneurs in healthcare have done something in healthcare, or they're physicians, et cetera, et cetera. So we're getting a very rounded and well-balanced opinion about the investment opportunity. And what we're looking at in the beginning, given that most of them are very early, they're not as early as an incubator, of course, but this is where we basically pick up either after incubator or maybe a little even later, because venture funds like yours, for example, are not going to step in early enough. So there's the gap between incubator, a company coming out of incubator, and funding by venture group is pretty big. I mean, I expect actually a couple of angel rounds before the company gets to where it has to get as far as institutional investors to attract institutional investors' attention. So we do look at the team first. Team is the most important thing. Team, of course, team and the market, and sometimes it's very difficult to understand whatever comes first. But team probably comes first because if it's a good team, they can still pivot the company. They can figure out what's going on. If the team is wrong, no matter how good market is, it's still good. They just might turn into a problem. So, team is number one.
the whole point of this panel is for you to hear of these different points of view. So it's Milena's organization, LSAN, Life Science Angel Networks, in a sense exists to keep people like me who are angels from doing stupid things. She does everything you should do, due diligence, checks things out, has lawyers, negotiates terms that make sense for the investors, and so forth and so on. Angels who aren't part of angel networks, and I operate in both ways, they tend to be much nicer, and they'll give you possibly a higher valuation, but they won't give you as much money, and they certainly, most angels don't have time to give you as much support or kind of the official useful infrastructure that either an angel network or an incubator or an accelerator will give you. As an angel network, as an angel individual, I don't have a committee. I can do things that I think are interesting or cool. Instead of doing due diligence, I invest, so I have a higher failure rate, but I also have probably a higher return on the deals I do that work out, because I come in really early when companies aren't even ready for something like an angel network. What I do varies dramatically between, I do the $3.99 apps, a couple of them. I also do things in Russia and Africa. And I'm on the board of 23andMe, which is an extremely, not an angel company at all. It's a kind of high level, this is the genome company that was founded by Sergey Brin's wife. So I don't apologize to anybody because I'm not investing other people's money, which means I can take more risks. And it's fun. On the other hand, you get just me. You don't get an organization or infrastructure around me.
Great. So first I want to clarify a little bit about how Kleiner Perkins invest. We actually write $50,000 checks, and we write $20, $30 million checks. And at any given time, we have 5 to 7 companies incubating at our offices. So we have an incubation space. It looks like South of Market. It's very cool, lots of colors, lots of glass. And so we do that, and we invest across that continuum. And many of those companies that we do incubate are either digital health-like companies or are digital companies to begin with. So to talk about digital health, I'm gonna put kind of IT-enabled services. I'm going to put kind of the business system stuff that goes into payers and hospitals and put that aside and talk about what I think we're talking a little more about digital health here. And the way I would define it and how maybe characterize it a little bit, what we see is we see a lot of consumer-focused companies. I'll talk about the pros and cons of that. One of the key pros, of course, is that every single provider or payer wants to get closer to the healthcare consumer and have more direct influence on the healthcare consumer. And that's because of the two things I mentioned earlier. You've got a more informed consumer, and you also have a consumer that's paying more of the bill, and he or she will have more influence on choices in healthcare moving forward. So that's one thing we've noticed. Another is you have two phenotypes, and Hallie mentioned them. You have the IT people that look at the healthcare system and think, you guys are the biggest idiots that have ever existed. I'm going to come in and I'm going to fix this by myself. And I think, first of all, that's wonderful. We need more of that because those people are not confined by the paradigms all of us have developed in healthcare over the years. On the flip side, we have the healthcare people that think, geez, I'm going to get really smart on the digital side, and I'm going to have a digital solution for everything in healthcare. And I think what we have there is we have both sides. Very rarely do we see companies that have both sensibilities. And so one of the things we look for is, do the people that come from the IT side have some sensibilities of the challenges of the healthcare market, because it is a different market. And the healthcare consumer is a different animal than a normal consumer, and we can talk a lot about that also. So that's one characteristic we see. One of the other challenges, however, with the consumer model is consumers don't like to pay for things. We know real healthcare, some of the things that Esther mentioned, they see as an entitlement, and that's been paid for. They do think about engagement and wellness a little bit differently, and so there may be an opportunity to do that. But we know selling to healthcare consumers is very difficult. The other thing we find is a challenge with business models and who is actually going to be paying for the service. So if you understand that the consumer on their own most likely is not going to pay that much for a service, or at least we haven't seen that yet, is it going to be a payer? Is it going to be a provider network? Is it going to be a pharmaceutical company, a device company? Who's going to pay for it? The last thing we see is a challenge on where you are on the continuum of fun and medicine. And a lot of companies don't know where they are on that continuum, and it's very dangerous to be in the middle of that continuum. The last thing would really be, again, business model innovation. And that's an area we talk a lot about when we talk about innovation. An area that I like, and it's true on devices and other things, is I like to see people that come up with different business models, not just a product or a technology. So those are some of the things we're seeing with these young companies in digital health.
I know Sean's next, but just very briefly, what Dana said is so true, and it reminds me of what somebody said this morning, that one of the biggest issues you face is figuring out your distribution channel and why you're attractive to that channel. It's a part of the business model. Who wants this? Who wants to buy it for somebody else? Who saves costs looking down the road? The one organization that hasn't been mentioned as much, but I think is tremendously important, is employers. Even as they're trying to offload healthcare costs, they're still trying to incentivize employees, they're trying to retain employees, and they're trying to make the employees not just feel wanted, but they actually benefit when people are healthy. Most people simply pass along the cost of ill health, but employers actually bear that cost in people who don't show up for work, in people who are unmotivated, in people who behave badly because they're not feeling well. So employers can be a real ally if you know how to go after them. And HR people are really under-respected. So if you go and you do nice things for HR people, it may work out very well. They don't always have big budgets, but if you can help them understand how to present what you offer not as a cost, but as a benefit to the company, that can be really valuable.
They're pretty risk adverse because very rarely does the CEO come and congratulate them on a good benefit program.
No, but if they lower costs, I mean, you're seeing companies like Walmart, Walmart, Safeway, and of course all the Enlightened Valley companies, Intel, Cisco, Google, they're all doing really innovative things around health. Pardon? Starbucks.
Great, thank you. So Sean, I'm going to modify the question a bit for you. So in pitching or just talking to investors, could you share some stories about the differences in your conversations and the reactions of the life science investors and the tech investors? So what were those conversations like? Who really got it? What were their feedbacks from these two different perspectives?
Yeah, so I mean, I can definitely speak to that because there's, I've gone through a whole gamut of talking to lots of different people, and some people don't get it at all, and some people get it like that real quickly. I think on the life science side, they're more on the don't get it side of things, and the tech gets it a little bit more. That being said, we're still young, and maybe I'm wrong, and maybe they, it's completely inverted. But I think one thing I noticed early on is that you have some investors, particularly angels that are independent like Esther, who can invest on emotion and can invest on vision, right? And then you have other investors that can invest, that will only invest if they see traction and they want proof, right? And it really depends on where you find yourself on that spectrum. I'm much more attracted to those investors that want to take a risk on us and believe in us because they either know a friend or family member that has a chronic condition, they have an autoimmune condition themselves, and they understand what it's like to be in those shoes, and they understand why our product is so helpful to those people. I mean, one thing that, actually another thing I learned in pitching to investors is I actually, like I said, I stumbled into this. So I started as a single founder, not even really knowing I was a founder. I just started programming this thing, right? And then I was like, at a certain point, I saw a whole lot of success, and I wanted to take this to the next level and raise some investment. Where I kept hitting a brick wall was that, oh, you need a co-founder, oh, you need a co-founder, and I would point to my product and I'm like, this thing's working totally fine, it's taking off. Like, why are you so insistent on that paradigm? And honestly, I still don't know the answer to that, but I do know that I had to solve that problem. And luckily, in college, I met an amazing programmer, and he became a great friend of mine. His name's Will, and I pitched him the idea, and he came on board, and that's enabled us to get past that hurdle. Let's see, what else to talk about here? So yeah, if you're at a super early stage, you're at sort of the vision stage, you're programming something up, as you already know, probably the institutional investor is not the person that you want to go to. You want to go to these independent angels that might actually have something that relates them to your product. So like actually a couple of our, we've raised a small seed round right now. A couple of our early investors are people that their girlfriend has Crohn's disease, their wife has MS, right? And it's when you get someone that believes that closely because they're so connected to the condition that they will take risks on you. They'll bet on you and they'll buy into your vision. And I think ultimately that helps you out down the road because you have investors that believe in your vision and aren't just after the money.
Great, thank you. I know we're kind of running out of time, and I want to leave some time for you guys to ask questions. So I'm going to ask quick questions to each of you, and they're going to be different questions. And please don't be so verbose. Milena, how does an angel group actually work?
Our angel group?
Yes.
Okay.
Or actually, no, a angel group. Just
an angel group. Okay.
generic
Angel group.
structure.
Generic structure. So, I mean, can you just go back a little bit to Sean, because I have a question. I have a question to you. Why do you think life science people don't get it? Because usually I thought, no.
You guys can take this outside.
Let me finish. Because I thought actually that most of the inventions in life sciences, I mean, in healthcare, I'll talk about devices because that's what I, historically have done, came from the knowledge of the field. They actually come from practitioner, from physician, or from someone, or from scientist who was working on the problem. Hence, they know it and then see value, etc. So I'm a little surprised to see that, that you were turned down by life sciences investors. It would be interesting why.
Yeah. So I mean,
really quick, so we don't.
Yeah, the main reason is that for me, my perspective is that the healthcare system moves too slow, and once you get into devices and that sort of mindset, it's not the mindset we're at. We're at this consumer thing. We're going direct to patients. I'm a patient myself. I know tons of patients, so it's super consumer tech, consumer health tech. And I think that's where you have life science investors that's not their typical investment, that sort of consumer side of things of like just software. So the tech investors are the ones that match up better. Yeah.
Right. Now about Angel Group. So the way we work, it's actually very it's a structured process. It's not terribly complicated. We have screening committee that gets together once a month or reviews opportunities that were submitted to our group online or in person once a month, as I said. It's a multidisciplinary group that has physicians, has investors, has entrepreneurs, so attorneys, IP lawyers, et cetera, et cetera. And so we get together, we review those opportunities, and select 2 or 3 to present to to membership every other month. That's how it actually works. It's a structured process. So basically, you have to pass through a screening committee to get to survive screening committee, if you will, to present to the members of the group. But in fact, it's actually a very friendly group. It's a knowledgeable group, as I said, and so I find it actually it's much easier to get funded by a group of angel investors who have that background versus those who not, because they actually can relate to the problem. It will be so. For example, we getting sometimes referrals from other angel groups in the city that do mostly tech investments, for example, and they would just bounce an opportunity by us and say, hey, this is not our really sweet spot. It's a great and very very credible angel group, but they just don't feel comfortable investing just because they don't know what it is.
Great. Esther, you travel a lot. What do you think about the global health market opportunity? And are you investing globally, or are you just trying to learn a lot?
Okay, I will answer that, but first I also want to answer the
You guys, whose panel is
clueless life science investors. So,
You guys are hijacking my panel.
yeah. It's a long story, but I'll make it very brief. I was trying out one of these cool new empowered consumer things, and there was a problem with it. This happened, in fact, it was at Rock Health. I got a call from the CEO of the company who said I had an extremely high potassium level and I should immediately call a doctor. This was in the evening. And so the first doctor I thought of was my sister, who's a cardiologist. But I knew if I called her and told her I had a problem with something like this, she would say, Esty, you see, I told you, you shouldn't be messing with this stuff. It's doctors who need to take care of you, and empowering consumers is a bad idea. The doctors, the life sciences community, many of them really feel very uncomfortable with giving so much power to individuals because they're afraid they'll do something stupid. And, you know, they're right. But people do stupid in other areas of life. And you don't need to hire a consultant before you can pay your taxes, even though you do need to hire a doctor before you can go get your blood drawn. It's crazy. But that's why. And so I sympathize.
Disclosure, it was at Rock Health, but it was not a Rock Health startup.
No, it was not a Rock Health startup. It was a...
We don't make mistakes.
No, they deserve to be outed. It's a company called Segterra, and they did a bad blood draw. Apparently, high potassium is kind of like leaving the lens on your camera. It's just something, it's a sign that somebody did the blood draw badly. International, lots of demand for health stuff. It's different because the institutional marketplace is very different because government's much more involved. It's easier to collect data. It's much harder to sell to governments. Even the U.S. market, at least, is so chaotic. You can always find someone who might buy something. It's very different. In emerging markets, there's huge demand for cool things that are cheap and effective and less regulatory barriers. In Russia, there's a company called In Vitro that's kind of like LabCorp or Quest, except you don't need a prescription. You can just go in. They give you a list of, you want calcium and CRP levels and maybe cholesterol. Just check here and pay, and you'll get it in 4 days. And most people who come in actually are working with a doctor, but not necessarily. And anyway, it's a large market, but you need to know what you're doing. And I don't know how to give a useful answer other than I'm involved in it.
Great. So Dana, this is a hypothetical question, and I'm not trying to indicate anything, but you see a lot of deals. If you were to leave the investment side and join a company as maybe CEO, COO, what kind of company would it be?
Well, first of all, I have a question for each of the panelists. Just kidding. Well, that's an interesting question. What would I do? I think I would do one of two things. I would probably go back and maybe run one of the large device companies if I went back into the device world, and really because of the opportunities that exist outside the United States. And I think the opportunities to create new business models and products for the developing world. What the device industry has done historically is they build something for the U.S. and they tell the international markets you're going to like it and you're going to use it the same way we use it in the U.S. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to innovate in business models and product defined very broadly across the whole continuum of patient care. The second thing I would do is probably some form of IT-enabled service, a healthcare service. And I would focus a lot on the international markets. I think there's huge opportunity where infrastructure is yet to be built in developing markets around the world to utilize technology to provide healthcare defined very broadly in more effective, higher quality ways and more capital efficient ways. So it'd probably be one of those two areas.
Cool. And I did not prep him on that. That's a tough one. So Sean, and we'll have to kind of move this along so we can ask one or two questions. Right. You're hiring now. What are the skills that you're looking for? Maybe just throw out a couple of adjectives.
Really smart and get shit done. That's two.
In that order?
Yes. No, probably in the other order, actually, even. Yeah. So, I mean, software developers that program front end or back end, where our stack is Ruby on Rails. And we also need people in the front end, HTML, CSS, JavaScript.
I was looking for things like empathy.
Oh,
and-
oh, screw that. No. Actually, we have a great balance in our company right now. We're actually like 50-50, like 50-50 on like has chronic conditions and healthy. We're 50-50 on male, female. We got this amazing balance going on. But no, seriously, we really strongly emphasize being connected with the patient. I mean, that's what's served, I believe, myself well in building a product that people love. And so we bring in patients into our company every week to just immerse everybody in their stories and immerse them in their understanding of the condition.
Great.
Yep.
All right, some questions? Yes.
I have a question about in the digital health space when people sell to hospitals. It's one, I think a real challenge for digital health and health IT is that in landing that hospital customer, you risk creating such a customized solution that your ability to scale goes away. But it's very hard in health IT to get traction unless you actually have data. So I'm talking more B2B, I guess, when you have the consumer side. But I wonder if you could think of examples of companies that have successfully come up with an IT solution that a hospital was able to deploy. They got data that proved its efficacy, and then were able to bring that to other hospital systems with some kind of efficiency. Because I'm not in the mobile health space, but I think that's a great example of one in which you really see lots of mobile health players building a mobile app in one place, and it's so customized to that ICU that they can't bring it anywhere else. So I really would love examples of what people have done and how they did it well.
Okay, so I can give two quick examples. One company we've invested in, and the question's really around how do you sell effectively in hospitals without having to have a customized solution for every deployment. So two companies. Number one is Accretive Health. They're out of Chicago. Yeah, but they were very successful for two reasons. Number one, they were tied to revenue cycle management. And if you're tied to revenue cycle management, it's very easy to show an ROI. And number two, they aligned themselves with a very large hospital system early on. And so that system was an investor in the company, and they also created incentives for that system. For the more implementations, they got a higher discount collectively. Second one is one we're involved in called AwarePoint, and it's on real-time asset tracking in hospitals. So just think they deploy across a whole enterprise a Zigbee network, and then they tag the equipment, the physicians, the patients, and then they have a software layer that looks at workflow and asset deployment that sits on top of that. So what's happening in the hospital, there's two big areas. Number one's a clinical area that Cerner and Epic owns, but there's a whole operational side of the hospital, and this really focuses on the operational side. So those are two, because of the needs of the hospitals. As hospitals look at ACOs and other accountable organizations where they're going to be capitated, they need to manage their expenses and their business processes more effectively. The next big area, I think, in hospitals is going to be really helping them manage physicians. So what's happening now is all the hospitals, which they did 15 years ago and they undid, are now going out and hiring primary care physicians, and they're hiring the specialists because they know that's the only way they can control the cost in a fully capitated environment. So even though we might not get to a capitated environment right away, they just know that that's the case. So those are two examples I'd give.
Investors. No. No, yeah, I mean, we're totally right now just focused on trying to make ourselves this third social network that we believe should exist. So you've got Facebook for your social network, and you've got LinkedIn for your professional network, and we believe that a social graph is equally as helpful as sorting information on the health side. Now, to finish belaboring the point, we are looking at the clinical trial recruitment market. And so, right now, $3 billion is spent every year just getting patients in the door for clinical trials. Essentially, drug companies, they have to go through the clinical trial pipeline to get drugs on the market, and right now, 85% of those run late because of patient under-enrollment. This is a notorious problem. They're literally bleeding to death because they can't get patients in the door. So what we can do is actually connect the patients that need these services because they're literally out of treatment options. With the clinical trials that are going on. That's
an example of a company that's doing that, Patients Like Me, takes a lot of different communities across a lot of different disease states, and they've been able to start monetization through pharma companies doing the two things that Sean just mentioned, for instance. You can answer. I mean, it's mostly an opt-in model, but you can.
Yeah, it's totally opt-in. I mean, right now we're not actually we don't have that revenue model in action right now. So it's I don't have a clear answer for you right now, but all data is basically we handle all the work, all anonymized, and essentially the drug company doesn't need to see anything until there's a connection made that is opt-in on both sides.
I'll just add to that because I'm an investor in Patients Like Me. The patients and patients like me are thrilled to have someone look at their data, use it in research, and maybe help cure the next patients because they want to give back something, especially at Patients Like Me. These are very sick people, and they would like nothing better than to do something useful for the world. So it's a very different dynamic. The only thing that happened was some well-known company pretended to sign on as a user and started stealing and selling Patients Like Me's data, and that was not part of the business model. It was one of the sleaziest things I've ever seen. But in general, the data comes in willingly, and of course you need to properly tell people what you're going to do with it. But in many cases, you don't need to de-identify it. These people want to be tracked over time and talk to pharma about what works and what doesn't.
A lot of the people that participate in these communities have self-selected in, right,
Yeah.
to a sharing mode, want to do something good for the world, help other patients with the same.
Yeah. Cure Together is another one, and also Ubiqui Health, who I met today.
And I met actually a company called My Autism Team, my chronic disease basically team. They're doing my breast cancer team, etc. They're basically creating a web page for every chronic disease condition. It's sort of like where Facebook meets Yelp, and you can get information not only about your patients who sharing their experiences, but also about specific service providers tailored to that specific patient population. So they're in the Bay Area.
And
Right.
Gina Mara, lest I forget.
You guys are challenging. Okay, one more question. So who's got a really good one?
She's hitting me every time.
It was a very smart
All
way
right,
to put
Anmol?
data in between us.
Question for you guys. So there's a lot happening in the space around essentially companies that are helping people stay healthy, right? And so you guys are one example. There's a number of those companies that behavior change or understanding behavior to get what you guys mentioned. And I think if you're an entrepreneur starting with this company, you sort of have one or two options, some combination of options. One option is to do things the way that you traditionally done, go for validation, go for I can improve savings, I can improve help you stay healthy, and it's very biomedical way of doing it. But then the other, which is happening, is kind of companies usually build most almost for engagement. So you're engaging users and you're building that community, you're getting people interested in using some app, and it's not necessarily clear that at what point that becomes binding, or that everything becomes binding. And as investors, if you're seeing that transition happen, I think this engagement-based business didn't really exist 5 years ago. It's the new invention, given the time and all the things that are happening. So how does that affect long term? Do you think these engagement-based companies will have to validate at some point? Do you think we can all go really big and become part of the network ecosystem without that? How do you see that merging or at least?
Well, I think it depends on how you define validation. If validation is that you get a lot of people to participate and they comply or engage in a consistent, sustainable manner, everyone will pay for that. So I think it's how you define it. I don't think you need a lot of science because, as Esther said, we know what people need to do. And the reason why doctors don't believe in healthcare consumer is they've told them what to do for years, and they've never the healthcare person they don't do it. We don't take our medications. We don't do what the doctor says on exercise. We don't do from a diet point of view what the doctor said traditionally. So if you can show a change, a sustainable change, not just an anecdotal change, I think you'd have a great product. The other challenge we see is a lot of these apps are very narrow. So it's a weight loss app, and it's just an app. It's not a weight loss program. Esther mentioned the employer. The employer doesn't know what to do with a weight loss app. What they need is an integrated program, and sometimes the payer will provide that for them, et cetera. And her point on the employer is important. Ultimately, the large self-insured employer is the one that pays the bill in healthcare. It's not the payer. The payer is misnamed. The payer is an administrator, right? It's the large companies that are actually paying the bill.
We don't dare to say anything.
Well, let's give a round of applause to our wonderful panelists.